In this video, we're going to take a look at the hardware for the Neo X series console. We've got the Neo X15 here, but the Neo X15 and the Neo X5, they run the same software and their hardware is very similar. So this video will cover both of those. So let's start on the left-hand side of the console. We've got our playback faders. If we record onto them, we can just have a single lighting state on a submaster, or we can actually have cue lists on here. So we can have multiple cue lists at one time. The cue stacks are a strip here. We've got two buttons at the bottom, we've got the fader, we've got a select button at the top, and we have an encoder as well. The encoder can be configured so that it could adjust the hue or the effect speed of our playback here. But equally, you can also put the console into what we call wide mode, so that these are actually another set of playbacks, so that they control the intensity of separate playbacks. We've got the 15 faders here on our X15, and we've got 5 playback faders on the X5 console. Above those, we have our shortcut keys, or what we call our X keys. They are by default shortcut controls. Again, we've got 15 of those on the X15, 5 of those on the X5. We've got page buttons which page through our playback faders here. Moving along, we've then got our master playback controls, so that those allow us to control the currently selected cue list on the console. The faders by default are linked, but you can, if you want to, start to separate them out and customize the functionality of the faders. And then to the right of that, we've got our main programming section, including a syntax number pad there available. And then moving further right, we've then got our 7-inch touchscreen. This allows us to access extra command keys that we've not got on the console, but also allow us quick access to groups, or allow us to access our color picker on the console as well. Above that, we've then got our 5 encoder wheels plus intensity wheel. The encoder wheels allow you to adjust items such as fixture controls. They allow us to access and control our views on the console. And as well as that, we have associated up and down buttons for each one of the encoders. Top right of the console, we have our Grandmaster section, so a associated Grandmaster button and fader, and we've also got a pot here. By default, that is the master fade time on the console. It allows you to add a fade time to syntax commands, for example, but the functionality of those can be configured. That then leads us nicely onto the large touchscreens themselves, and we'll talk about what we can see on those shortly. And in between those touchscreens, we have got our S keys here. By default, they are our layout selection, so they can choose what our screens do. On the X15, we have got the 2 touchscreens. On the X5, we've just got the single touchscreen there. But on both consoles, you can connect 2 additional high-definition external monitors. We've then got our pot here at the top. By default, this allows you to very quickly adjust the console brightness to dim the brightness of the console if needed. So that's some of the front panel controls we've got. We've also got a USB-C port here, top left of the console. And because we're on the X15, we've also got a keyboard drawer here. So we can access that for quick naming of various items. And we've also got our desk light here that we can adjust the brightness of, and we've got audio outputs for connecting headphones and USB ports on the front of the X15. So let's pop around the back and take a look at some of the rear connections. So this is the rear of the Neo X15 console. We'll start over here on the right-hand side. Up the top here, we've got our audio section. So we've got a XLR for audio input, and as well as that, we've got a pair of balanced XLR outputs for audio left and right. Primary purpose of that is if you may have an audio track loaded into the console that you've then gone in and put time code points in, so you can synchronize an audio track with your various lighting cues. And also for sound effects. You might want to have sound effects loaded in the console, which again, you can have stabs of light synchronized too. So you can press go on the console to trigger both that sound effect and the lighting simultaneously. Below that, you've then got your SMPTE LTC. That's in and out on 3-pin XLRs again. Moving over, we've then got our MIDI connections in, out, and through. Those are for supporting MIDI timecode and various other MIDI trigger protocols as well. Moving over further on, along the bottom here, you've then got your DMX connections on your 5-pin XLRs. You've got, on the X15 here, 4 DMX outputs here, along with a DMX input port for remote triggering. Above that, you've then got your network ports. One of those is labeled LAN, one of them is labeled WAN, but they are fully customizable. They are separate network interfaces. You can configure them how you wish, but you've got that labeling there to help you out know which is which. And of course, the network protocols, they can be used for remote connections, various protocols, including streaming ACN and ArtNet. In total on the console, you have got 100 universes with no fixture limit. So you can start to route that out of your physical outputs or, of course, over the network. So that's your pair of network ports. Those are on EtherCon connections. Moving on from that, we've then got a pair of USB-C ports. You also have got a USB-C port on the front of the console next to the inbuilt touchscreen. Moving on from that, at the top here, we've got a pair of DisplayPort outputs. They're capable of driving a 4K monitor each. And below the DisplayPorts, you've then got a USB-A 3.0 connection as well, kind of designed for if your 4K DisplayPort screens are multi-touch screens, you can plug the touchscreen into the USB there. We then have our fans here, and they have easy access filters, so you can remove that and clean them every once in a while, certainly if you're in a more dusty environment. And then we've got our power input. That is a locking PowerCon True 1 connector. And you'll notice that next to that, there is no power switch. The reason for that is you don't want your console just being forced to power off by flicking the switch. And so to power up and down the console, you have got a button on the front of the console. Press that, the console will automatically boot up. Press it again, it will automatically shut down. And then we've also on the console, we've got one here and one on the other side as well. You've got your console light, and that can be dimmed along with all of the other illuminated parts of the front panel that can all dim up and down together. So that is the rear panel of the X15. So let's take a look at the rear panel of the X5 as well. So this is the back of the X5. We've got a pair of 5-pin XLR connectors there and a DMX in port as well. Above those, we do have our network ports. So with those, we can output, again, 100 universes of DMX over the network. One is labeled WAN, one is labeled LAN, just like the X15, but they are fully customizable network interfaces. So you could have one for connected to the internet, whilst the other is outputting your streaming ACN or ArtNet. Then we've got our USB-C connectors. We've got a pair on the back, and we do have one on the front, just to the top left of the tablet holder. And then again, we've got the ability to drive 2 external 4K monitors, and they can be touchscreens using those USB connectors there. We've got one fan on the back, and then just like the X15, we do have the locking PowerCon True 1 connector as well. And on the X5, we have a single console light. Again, that can be dimmed up and down along with the rest of the console brightness. So now that we've taken a look at the hardware, let's take a look at our screens that we've got on the console here. So the right-hand screen here, that's our main display. Running along the top, we've got various different functions. We've got some select keys, some intensity controls. We've also got some quick record options. And then on the far right here, we've also got some quick access to groups or palettes or our fixture library. At the very bottom, that's our command line. So as we type in our commands, we can see those getting typed in there. Bottom right, we've got our window buttons here. So these are able to take us into patch, for example. We can very quickly go into our patch window, or I can go and click live either on the screen or on the console. And to the right of those, we've then got customizable buttons. So we've got a little drop-down button there that allows us to choose various windows. And once we've chosen what window we want, we can then actually open that window full screen. So I can then go and access my cue list full screen, for example. I'm going to hit live to go back to live. As well as those but tabs here though, changing the whole screen of the console, we've got fully customizable layouts. So all of our individual windows that we can see here, these can be customized. You can lay them out however you want. And that's thanks to the all-new Neo V4 software that's running on the X5 and X15. What we're seeing here, this is the default layout. So at the top here, I've got my channels grid. Bottom left, I've got my attributes window. And then on the far right here, we've got our sidebar for our cue list and fixture control. You'll see here at the bottom right, well, that's an empty window. We can go and choose to open a new window on there. So I could go and choose to open my color picker on there, for example. And so that is our main screen there and how we can lay that out. And we can start to rearrange these. We can go and use our layout tools here to go and close a window, for example, or we can go and open a new window to the right of that if we need to. And all of that logic also applies on our second screen. So on the second screen, what we've got here is we've got our shortcut buttons along the top here. So these are showing us our first 10 shortcuts that we might have assigned. For this particular show file, I've actually assigned a save show as my 10th shortcut. So I've got a quick on-screen button there. And at the bottom of our second screen, this shows us our faders. So I can see what submasters I've currently got on this current page. I can see the levels they're at. I can actually go in and change the settings of those if I need to. On the Neo X5, we don't have this screen, but you can open these windows on an external monitor if you need to. This is the default layout of the second screen. So we've got effects at the top, we've got groups, we've got palettes. It's worth noting this is the tabbed palette window, so this allows us to actually go through and access all of our different palette types all in one window. And then bottom left, we've got our color picker, and we've also got our frame picker here as well. So if I go and grab control of some lights, I'm going to actually be able to go in and access various different options within the currently selected fixtures. So we can start to customize this. So I could go and say, right, well, I don't want my tabbed palettes there, so I can go and close that if I want to. I might want to go and close my picker. And once I've then customized my window, I can save that. I can record that layout. So by default, my S keys here, they are my layouts. So I can go and hit the record button on the console and tap a layout button. And then I can give that a name if I want to. I'm just going to go and hit OK on that. And that is then stored on my console. And that's stored to layout number 7. So I can now very quickly go and swap between these layouts. On S3, I've already programmed that. That's got my color picker full screen. And then I can jump back to the one that we just programmed where we had our effects, groups, and color pickers. So you can very quickly start to jump between windows and customize the console to how you need it. If you are using an external monitor, of course, you don't have these keys running along the side. But that's not a problem because on the right-hand side of every screen, you can access your layouts within the layouts ribbon at the side there. So I'm going to go to my window here, which is just my full screen color picker. What I'm going to go and do is I'm going to minimize that window. And I can then go and open my training window. We've got a whole window dedicated to the training videos on the console. We can go in, there's over 40 on the console, and we can go in, choose a video. We can go and make that full screen if we want to and start to play that. And we can then follow along with what we're seeing in the video, and we can follow along on the actual console. And you can go and plug in headphones, and you'll be able to actually listen to the content in those training videos. I'm going to go and just tap my color picker window to close the training. So that's the training videos on the console. But if we go back over to our primary screen here, if we go options, we've then got quick access to save our file. So if I go and say save file, that will then allow us to go and save this show file. I can actually, if I've got my console on the internet, I can save to cloud storage. And I can choose to either save a normal show file, I can save a packed file, that includes absolutely everything about your console, or you can actually save a template. So that's ideal if you want to save a template file for your venue, so you can always get back to your normal default settings. I'm going to come out of that though, and if I can go to options, I've also got my open file, so I can open a show file if I need to as well. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my playback fader down, and I'm going to go and choose new show. And that's going to allow me to go back to a completely fresh console. I've got nothing in there, and we're now ready to start patching. So that's the Neo X hardware. We've looked at the front panel controls, we've looked at the rear connections, and we've also started to take a look at some of the screens and windows that we can view and how we can start to customize those.